Welcome to Kansas Day. This is an event put on by the Center for Service Learning at the University of Kansas. We're so glad you're here and taking some time out of your Saturday to reflect on Kansas and what we love about it and why we want our community to live up to our highest expectations and ideals. At the University of Kansas, we acknowledge that our institution occupies land that has long been cared for by Indigenous peoples and we will work to reflect on the history of genocide and the forced removal of those people and communities. At KU, we are taking time to understand and acknowledge our history that has brought us and our institution to occupy this space and to understand our institution's place within that history. Native American and Indigenous peoples are still here as our student, staff, faculty, and partners and continue to thrive despite ongoing colonialism and oppression. So with this acknowledgement, we affirm sovereignty of the 574 federally recognized tribal nations in the United States, for which that have reservations in Kansas, the 63 state recognized tribes, and the many more tribes who seek recognition. We also continue our commitment to support our Native American community and recognize the dynamic contributions Indigenous people make at KU and at our sister institution, Haskell Indian Nations University, as well in our local communities, the state of Kansas, and our country.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to just start a little bit by talking about what Kansas Day is. I know some people on the call are from Kansas, some are not. So just making sure we all have kind of a common understanding of what Kansas Day is and what the point of it is. So Kansas was admitted into the Union 161 years ago today on January 19th or 29th of 1861. Kansas Day is the annual celebration of our statehood in Kansas. It's been observed since 1877, starting in a single school in Paola, Kansas, and has grown over the years to really serve the purpose of celebrating Kansas statehood and learning about Kansas history. So what we're trying to do is really think about how Kansas history and how learning about Kansas issues is playing into the work that we're doing, as Will said at the beginning, to make this state a better place, make this state a place where more folks can thrive, regardless of background or status. So one thing that I think is important to note, and I was reading a couple of articles about this, that, the state of Kansas was founded for a reason. Unlike other states, there's a very specific cause related reason why Kansas was founded at the time it was and in the way that it was. And so Carl Becker, an American historian who actually was a professor at the University of Kansas for a time in the early to mid 1900s, noted that the origin of Kansas must ever be associated with the struggle against slavery. Of this fact, Kansans are well aware is a state with a past. So unlike the state of Iowa or the state of Illinois, the state of Kansas has a very specific purpose for why it was founded, when it was founded, and just kind of all of the different issues that were going on at the time. And that doesn't change, to today when we're thinking about advocacy and how we can work to support ideas and causes through public avenues as well as private communications with our networks in supporting a position on an issue. So advocacy is really actively promoting a cause or a principle, something that you care about, and there's a lot of different actions within that lead to whatever the goal is. There isn't always a direct service component to it. You may be doing a lot of things behind the scenes, working with different communities, and you might not even see the full fruits of your labor at the end of it. As you move forward in your career, in your life, you may not actually see what you were working towards come to fruition, but you've made a considerable contribution towards that. And so as we're thinking about Kansas Day and advocacy, what this event is really trying to serve is putting those two things together and thinking about how on this day can we move forward from, just educating ourselves on Kansas history to really educating ourselves on Kansas issues and how we can get involved in those.
First, we have Heal KU. Yasmin is a senior in marketing in behavioral neuroscience and minoring in Spanish. Ria is a senior majoring molecular cellular developmental biology and minoring in applied behavioral science on the pre-med track. Yasmin and Ria are co-presidents of HEAL KU. HEAL KU is a student organization at KU committed to building sustainable relationships with local organizations and advocating for ethical service. HEAL focuses on truly valuing service that is ethical and doing so through educating the general body on systemic issues and communities that they serve and are facing every day. One of our other guests is Birdie Alt, who is a KU student and a Student Power Campaign Fellow with Loud Light. This semester, they're working at the state level to lobby voting access legislation with the hope of ensuring a campus voting location on all campus locations in the state and bringing student power back to the polls. Our last guest on our panel is Alyssa Francis, who serves as the graduate assistant for student organizations and non-traditional student services in the Student Involvement and Leadership Center. She is a second-year master's student in the Higher Education Administration program at the University of Kansas. In this role, she assists in planning the office programs, helps students start new student organizations, and meets one-on-one with student organization officers. So my first question to all of our panelists is, what is your favorite thing about Kansas? What do you like about Kansas?
Thanks, Will. Alyssa Francis, she, hers. My favorite thing about coming to Kansas, as a second-year master's student, I came here July of 2020, and I have really appreciated the sense of community that I felt being a member of Lawrence and the KU community, and just how welcoming the city is overall to the individuals who come, whether it be for the 4 years as students typically, or those who come for other reasons and are participating in the Lawrence community.
Hi, my name is Yasmin. My pronouns are she, hers. And I would actually really agree with that. I think about that a lot. I feel like people in Kansas are generally pretty approachable and very friendly. We have that Midwestern stereotype to us. And it's always so funny to me. I feel like every time I am traveling and we get back to KC in the KC airport, you could just tell that you're in Kansas because people are just so friendly and it's easy to have conversations with people and people are always just kind of willing to help out. And I think for me too, being at KU, it's been really easy for me to find my community here, which I don't know if it would have been the same had I went to a school, out of state or, further away. And so, I would definitely say my favorite part is the community aspect and how approachable everybody is.
Ria Patel, she, hers. I also agree with the community aspect, and I've always noticed how everyone can be so helpful in Kansas, when you travel, and in Kansas it's just a total different scenario. But I would also say the sunsets and the sunrise, I definitely, when I lived here, I feel like I took them for granted, and I whenever I travel, I would be oh my God, let's watch the sunset or the sunrise, but it would never be the same. Kansas sunrises are the best.
Yeah, I'm also from Kansas. I'm from Lawrence. And we have a great community here, but I think one of my favorite things was what Kate was talking about earlier of just how much history there is, specifically in Lawrence and throughout the rest of the state. It's always so fun when people start talking about US history and they bring things up and you're oh wait, that actually happened in Kansas, or that started in Kansas, and we're just so deeply embedded into the history of the US that I really enjoy being from here, because you're we actually started that, or we were such a big part of it. So that's really fun.
Our next question is, we mentioned our keynote address by Danny Kane. I was wondering if anyone had any takeaways, or what's one thing that stood out to you? What did you find interesting about the perspective of small businesses being advocates in their community?
I'm happy to start again. I really appreciated Danny's words on the capacity that we have for advocacy in all lines of work that we have. And I really appreciated the additional comments that came from the interconnections we can make about advocacy that may not feel like the direct connection to the work that we're doing. Sometimes we're well aware of our intended mission and purpose and what that looks like, but the ways that we can partner with others to expand what that looks like and action, I think is really cool, and something that I appreciate working with student organizations, student involvement, and being here today with y'all and seeing all the ways that we're able to make our community better and be there for each other by seeing the expansiveness of our connections instead of the limitations of what we've formally agreed to be a part of.
Yeah, I would say it's really interesting kind of the connection that small businesses have to advocacy. I think it's like not something I really thought about before like coming to Lawrence, because I didn't have much interaction with small businesses because I'm originally from Overland Park. So being on Mass and seeing all the small businesses kind of like new to me, and seeing how involved they are with the community. I think being a small business, like they have like more opportunities to engage with the community and kind of know people more on like a personal basis. And the kind of like the what happens in the community really affects them. So I feel like the ability for them to advocate for the people within the community is something that's really important, and something that we try to like spotlight small businesses as much as we can, because we really do appreciate the work they do for the community. And we thought about doing small business spotlights like on our social media, or having like an opportunity where like as a bonding event, like people can go to a new small business that, whether it's like food or like, getting like, whatever knickknacks or jewelry are on Mass. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept and something that I feel like a lot of people could like think about more. And it's not something that I actually really like thought about until I feel like I came to Lawrence.
So right now we're going to be speaking to Heal KU. So our first question for you is, in your own words, we mentioned a little bit about what Heal does, but tell in your own words, what would be your pitch for Heal and what your mission is?
So to start off, HEAL stands for Health, Education, Leadership, and Advocacy. So we try to find like advocacy topics that our e-board or Gen Body members are like really fond upon, that they want to share anything about. And we try to find guest speakers or speak about that topic ourselves to our Gen Body members. We also try to find volunteer opportunities connected around that advocacy topic that we could possibly be involved with within our community, or just other volunteering help volunteering organizations as well. And we just try to help out within our community in those aspects. Like Yasmin said, we also try to do small business spotlights and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to add on just a little bit to what Ria was saying, yeah, essentially just kind of having, it's a service organization that focuses not only on like service, but also advocacy. And we are just trying to kind of build a more like conscientious like community of volunteers as much as possible, with those advocacy topics being implemented into our meetings. And we've done like Ria said, we've had different guest speakers. We actually had Christina Hasswood come speak at our first Gen Body meeting, which was a really cool opportunity. And hearing from her was really cool. And she kind of talked about the health disparities within the Indigenous population. I think a lot of people really enjoyed hearing, kind of the issues that face not only like our global communities, but also our local communities. And she kind of talked about her work within the Lawrence community and her advocacy work. And having those opportunities for like implementing those opportunities for our Gen Body members is something we really enjoy doing. And having those guest speakers come in to speak on like a topic that we might not be as knowledgeable about, or like a topic that really affects our community, and having that knowledge implemented with our service work helps us just be more active and aware of kind of like the communities we are serving.
Well, that segues into my next question for you really well, which is HEAL works really closely with local community partners and really focuses on the local community. And I was wondering, why do that? Why focus on local and not more state and national issues?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that's something that we really focused on when we became Heal KU, because we did branch off from another organization that was more focused on national issues and doing international work as well. I think we found that it's more sustainable to work locally, and it's easier to build those long-term impacts within the community, because with the just kind of how easy it is to go and volunteer locally, there's that aspect to it. And also it's just it helps us create more of like a working small, and then kind of getting bigger is kind of the method that we go into it, because we can't really support these like local or these big national issues if we're not really focused on the issues within our community first and helping build our community as much as possible within. But yeah, I think a really big part of just the focus on working locally is being able to build more long-term impacts, which you otherwise probably wouldn't be able to do to the same extent if you work with more like national like communities and communities a little bit further away from us.
To continue off of that, I think it's also important to be able to see the impact that you make in order to motivate you to do more and progress further in what you're trying to do for your community. So I think it's really important to see how we can help in our small community, and we can just like grow from there as well.
Next guest that we're going to be interviewing is Birdie Alt. Hi, Birdie. Our first question is, what is Loud Light? How did you get involved, and what do you do with Loud Light?
Yeah, so Loud Light is a voting rights nonprofit organization here in Kansas. They've been around since 2015, 2016. And they mostly focus on like youth voter turnout, youth voter education, making sure that everyone here in Kansas has the opportunity to vote and knows how to vote. We're nonpartisan, so it's about getting everyone to vote. I started with Loud Light this time last year with our legislative internship where they follow the legislature. And I mostly got involved because I've been hearing people talk about Kansas legislature, from Brownback to when Governor Kelly was finally elected and all the bills and stuff that happened in between there. Heard people talk about it my whole life. And I just wanted to get involved and know what was happening with my government and figure out if I could help my community specifically in that area. Oh, and then what I do with Loud Light now, sorry. I am our one of our student power campaign fellows. And we started last fall, but we're working to bring voting infrastructure to campuses. So making sure that every college or university in the state of Kansas has a polling location on it or within like an accessible walking or travel distance, and then making sure that then those universities provide voter registration information, actually encouraging civic engagement on campuses, and making sure that students are adequately informed about their possibility to vote.
Well, the current legislative session in the state of Kansas is going on. And I think one thing I was wondering is, what are some of the legislative items and stories that you think citizens should be looking out for and that people should be aware of?
You've probably seen a lot about this in the news, but redistricting is going on right now after the 2020 census. So that is like state redistricting for representatives and senators here in Kansas, and then also our like national government representatives. That's a really big thing. Lawrence, like specifically for students, is probably going to see a lot of shifts in that. One of the maps that they propose cuts Lawrence out of the rest of Douglas County, which means that we would be represented by like along with the entirety of Southeast Kansas. So from Lawrence all the way to the border of Colorado. Not great. We don't have a lot of the same interests and the same economy and stuff as that. And then Lawrence is going to see some shifts as well in our representatives. We're hoping to get like a fifth one so that we can have more robust representation. Outside of that, there's going to be some pretty intense voting rights legislation this session. Some bills were introduced last week. Hopefully, Loud Light and the Student Power Campaign will have a bill going through to get that voting infrastructure like institutionalized through the legislature. And then the other one I would talk about would be the food tax bill, which I think is really exciting for college students because it will hopefully get rid of the food sales tax. So when you go to the grocery store, you might actually be able to afford food. You might not have to pay that 6.5% food tax, which is the second highest in the country. So yeah, that's what I would say to watch out for if you're looking on a cursory level.
Well, and Bertie, my last question is, if you were a Kansas voter today, and you wanted to do one thing that could make a positive impact, what would be one thing that I could do today that could make a positive impact?
Call your legislator, whether it's like your state senator or your representative or whatever. Find an issue that you care about, call them, talk to them about it. They will want to talk to you. They'll have like a 15-minute conversation. It's honestly one of the biggest ways to help. Giving testimony is really scary. So having a personal conversation with people like Christina Haswood are probably one of the easiest and simplest ways for you to help right now.
We have our next guest, Alyssa Francis. Alyssa, my first question is, how can students be advocates, or how can student organizations be advocates on their campus?
We are seeing a lot of student organizations that have very well thought out missions and purposes as an expectation for starting a student organization on campus. And it has been a point of pride for longstanding student organizations to say this is what we do. And we're really excited that this offers X opportunity to students in the community. And so one of the things that we're encouraging when students to start their advocacy work, whether it be at KU or within the Lawrence or the state community, is to connect the values, mission, purpose, events, you name it, about their student organization to personal values that they have, as well as seeing those connections that exist with the University of Kansas as well. And so acknowledging that participating in certain organizations, you may be looking for the networking components, the things that can serve students, the reason why you want to join an organization, because it can help provide that community, those opportunities you're looking for in college. But seeing that group of humans who participate in your organization with you care so much about some of the same things, it serves as a group to continue on and again identify those like interconnectedness aspects of advocating beyond just what one would say is the purpose of their organization, if it were more social in nature, things like that, and just having those conversations that connect the values of yourself to your org, to KU, to what you want your community to look like and the future you hope to be experiencing, I think serve as a great way for students to see the transition of advocacy in their experience and feel connected now and continue it with them.
If you were a student or a group of students who were passionate about an issue, what advice would you give to a student versus starting their own organization versus collaborating with an organization that already exists, or maybe changing an organization that already exists or adding new programming? What would you tell that student about what they might do if they're an advocate?
My first recommendation would be do research. It can be a little bit to a lot. I know that if someone is really passionate about something, research may be what got them very passionate about the topic to begin with, or it can be but I want to do, maybe not the research part. And I think research can be applied in a broad spectrum of terms, and that can be reaching out to staff members in offices at KU who have maybe been there longer than your term as a student, and they have historical knowledge of the university on student orgs that maybe have existed in the past, or events that occurred 10 years ago, but those students graduated. And so that could be a platform to start again. Much like CSL, your office has a lot of connections to community organizations and student organizations specifically for it. And so talking to you all about the connections that you have could produce more students to collectively work on a cause or with an organization to help the community. Silk would always love to help new student organizations start. Me starting with saying research and connecting with others to see what's going on is by no means a deterrent to start a new organization. But I just think that can be one of the best ways to see who else can join you in your efforts and be able to make the larger impact, and to see how many people you can have on your team when going after the causes, social issues, and things that you really care about. And then finding the people to support you when you are working for those, because you're identifying a group of individuals who feel how you feel, that can serve as a sounding board or support in those moments. And that can really help the longevity of the efforts you're making as a student.
What are some of the largest or most common issues you see with students doing advocacy work or service-oriented organizations, and what advice might you give them?
There's a lot of burnout going on across the campus for students in classes, in organizations, in all the work that they're doing. And so when we're trying to advise students on how to combat that, especially in terms of advocacy, is acknowledging that important work is being done if it's small work as well. It is really wonderful to be able to have large recognition and have those sparks of, oh my goodness, you're right, I have heard of this effort, I know exactly what's going on. And they have that large presence, but the small things that are going on are creating just as important work within the communities that those students are a part of. And so with that in mind, starting with effort that feels sustainable and manageable for you and whatever you define is one of the biggest pieces of advice that we have for student orgs to begin doing advocacy work. Because if you set those boundaries that you are for yourself in the same way that you say, I can only do a couple hours of homework a night, or the ways that you apply that to different areas of your personal work, in those ways, and then bring it in, you're going to be able to feel more confident in the work that you're doing and be able to sustain it for longer periods of time and be able to pass on those really great boundaries to students who come after you as well. So that way they can be like, wow, I was able to spend time with this great student leader and she showed me, or they showed me, that I could do wonderful effort while still taking care of myself at the same time. And that ultimately is serving multiple sides of the community in the student organization work and in the KU community by taking care of both our community and ourselves in that work that we're doing.
I just have a few more questions for everybody. And then if you're in the audience and you're watching and you want to think, and if you do have a question, either for one of our panelists individually or the group as a whole, feel free to send that to me or Kate in a direct message. And we might have some time at the end and we can definitely want to ask them that question. But can you tell us about a recent success that you had, large or small, in your advocacy work?
I'll start. So this year, the Student Involvement and Leadership Center has assisted in the creation of 27 new student organizations, and about 5 of them would define themselves to be specific service related. That is our category for them on our website, as advocacy is a part of that for some of those students. But even though not all of them, their core purpose mission stated is advocacy work, that's the creation of 27 new communities of students that are meeting this semester, that are able to have conversations and talk about the issues that they're facing, the causes that they want to champion for, and also produces at least 27 times 3. I wish I could do that math in my head, but that is not my strong suit right now. So, just shy of 90 student leaders who are able to work with students, and it's multiplying the numbers of individuals who are trying to create community to support students going forward. And so that's something that, despite the burnout and everything that we're seeing this year, we're very happy to see that there are students who are taking charge, taking care of themselves, and creating those opportunities for others.
Yeah, so myself and my co-leader of the Student Power campaign is Donovan Dillon, and we have had the pleasure of over the last couple of weeks meeting with some state legislators about drafting a bill, and so that's currently happening, which is really exciting. Not only because it's a bill and it's tangible, but we do have a historically Republican legislature, and we have a historically anti-voting rights legislature. And so it's really exciting to know that we have some pretty powerful allies in the state house who will help advocate for our right to vote as students. And so that is something that we have been celebrating a lot lately.
I would say something for Heal KU that has kind of been like a success for us is we've built a really good relationship with the Lawrence Community Shelter. I think in our the last year of kind of, because it was kind of our first year as Heal, and it was kind of hard to build up that relationship, especially with the pandemic. But I think this year we've been able to kind of build a really good relationship with them and offer those group volunteering opportunities, and kind of, and offer also like fundraisers for them. And we've built a really good relationship with them kind of overall, and they're always looking forward to us coming back. And so I think that's definitely something that we're pretty proud of.
Yeah, and to add to that, we were also, or just do something specific, we were able to create care packages for the Lawrence Community Shelter. And it was a fun time because we did it at Gen Body, at a Gen Body meeting. So everybody was able to create the care packages. And I think that that really brought a lot of people to our meeting. And we're hoping that we can do something like that this semester as well.
One success that the CSL has had recently, which was really amazing, is we had this really great summit, a sales summit for community engaged scholarship and leadership. It was really cool getting our faculty and staff engaged and be able to keep doing that work as scholars and advocates. So I thought that was really exciting that we were able to put that on. But our next question is, what piece of advice would you give someone who is hoping to become an advocate in their community or wants to engage in some advocacy work?
One area that I've seen come forth a lot over the past couple of years that has been really central to the student experience has been the discussion board aspect of academic spaces. And I think, in addition to all the really wonderful advice today, to offer another way to participate to the table is taking advantage of those opportunities to share some of the work that you're doing, where it applies, with like student org work that you're doing, and sharing out your experiences in those spaces, especially when it's intended to be a reply to classmates or things like that, when you're able to take some of your academic work and link it back to your student org work, to your community organizing work and things like that. And having that conversation in those spaces offers, in addition to the social media, the specific organizations, the student organizations within there, just gives another way that students may not be expecting that to be shared there. But if you know the connection and you're able to make it for yourself, sharing it out with other students can be really, really beneficial that way.
I was also just going to say, always be on the lookout for all the opportunities because we know that there are so many within our community. So just always be on the lookout for these opportunities, and there's always a way that you can help.
Like the best way to get started is to just talk with your community. I think that it can be really easy to be not self-centered, because obviously it's for everyone, but very focused on like the issues that you are facing in your community. And if you're noticing those issues, other people are too. Like Alyssa was saying, there are so many people out there who are already doing work. So I think just talking with your community, finding out what they need, what they're already doing, and how you can help is like the best way to get started and to really just throw yourself into it.
Yeah, I would say, just to add on, like utilizing the resources that are available to you, whether it be reading different newsletters or attending, panels like today or different volunteer fairs, finding people that are already engaging in that work within the community and getting to know them. I think it's really like, it helps a lot when you know people who are also interested in the same advocacy work as you. So making sure you're reaching out and making those connections and utilizing those resources, because people who are sharing them are always wanting more people to be involved with advocacy work, and people are always willing to help out. So I think definitely reaching out and utilizing your resources for sure.
I have a question for you, Birdie. I'm interested in, how you see the value of doing this work that you're doing outside of the university structure versus being a part of a student organization that's trying to do this work. Like, do you see benefits or hindrances either way based on kind of where within the structure you're operating, if that makes sense?
Number one, it's a lot easier because our goal is not just focused on KU, it's focused on universities across the state of Kansas. So I think it's a lot easier to sort of focus on that rather than or to be outside of the university when we're focusing on that, just because of like logistics. I like administration and stuff at KU is not going to know how stuff works at K-State or Pittsburgh and stuff like that. And so it's a lot easier to like separate ourselves from like specifically the needs of KU and like KU students. But I think it also does make it a little bit more difficult sometimes because um, it's not being a KU organization. There's a little bit more sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, like preference given, like when we're trying to meet with administration or when we're trying to meet with like student government in those orgs, like they're going to be focused on our KU organizations first, rather than like taking meetings or giving us resources and stuff, working outside of the university. So there's definitely like pros and cons to both. But I think also specifically for the work that we do, with it being like voter rights and stuff like that, the university can't really do a lot with stuff like that. So it's really focused on like our community, like Jamie Shue, our county clerk, and stuff at like the governmental level. So it does help that we're not a part of KU, so we don't have to jump through like legal hoops and stuff like that. So we can be like, yes, voting, and they can be like, we'll support you from afar, like that. So.
Well, I think I have one last question for the panel is I think advocacy work, we all, like we said, we want to talk about the successes, we want to talk about succeeding. I just wonder what advice you might give to someone who hits a roadblock or maybe has a disappointment. What advice you might give to someone where you really work on an issue and maybe it's not happening like you want it to?
I would say through connections with who you're working with, or whether like social media or something like that, being honest about what you're experiencing, I think goes a really long way. I know it's been shared to me for years that like social media is typically here's the best things that are going on right now for me. Although there has been a lot of opportunities for additional advocacy awareness and so many other things that are happening with a number of activists on social media, which isn't necessarily always that positive as well, offering news and information to students and to the world. But I think talking with your fellow students who you're working with, or with advisors, or with staff members of, I feel like I'm struggling here. I feel like I'm also the only one struggling, or things like that. Reaching out, asking for assistance, or just someone to act as a sounding board, I think can be really helpful, because it allows students and those doing this work to be able to say, I've shared it, I'm able to talk about it with someone who's not just like inside me and experiencing what I'm feeling, and hopefully allows me to understand what I'm doing, and then move forward, and either create plans or adjust and things like that, and just have another perspective to help, instead of feeling like it's all personal responsibility in those moments, instead of what we can be doing to support each other from those points as well as the positive ones.
I would say the other important thing to remember is that like even if you don't succeed in your exact goal, you're like paving a pathway for everyone behind you who's going to continue doing that work, and even for yourself if you continue that work. So just because you don't have some big glorious success, it doesn't mean that that work isn't helping. And I think that's important to remember, especially because we like to focus on big successes rather than little ones. So
kind of how Alyssa was also talking about earlier, just, making sure you're celebrating the small wins as well. I think there's a lot of like great like consequences that can come with advocacy work and just getting involved. And that's a lot of that is like finding people that you can really connect with. And so I think, looking at kind of the bright side of things, of maybe, maybe you didn't reach what you wanted to accomplish, but you got to meet this really awesome person who's also interested in advocacy work and also wanting to support the same cause as you. And I think by appreciating those little things, help goes helps go a long way. I kind of got confused there for a second. And I think that's something that like we're trying to focus on a lot, with not just within HEAL, but even within other organizations I'm involved with, because like people were talking about earlier as well, like there is definitely a lot of burnout, especially within the KU community and being with the pandemic, and a lot of shifts happening with people's involvement levels, and understanding that, you know, even if it's just one person that you can, that one, if you are, you know, putting on a meeting and, or you're putting on a volunteer opportunity, there's just one person that shows up, you know, that one person, and they have a great time. Like you reached one person, and that, you know, that person could be affected by that forever and could be really wanting to come back and return. I think with some of our meetings, you know, even if we don't have super great attendance, like there's still those people that are returners, and we've noticed that there's been a core group of people that are always willing to come back. And so I think that's something that is worth celebrating as well.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think it's really important to just talk it through with the people around you, because they can help you understand everything from like a different perspective that you weren't looking at before. And I think that's really important.
You make us proud and you inspire us, and we are so glad that you're in the state of Kansas and we get to share in that. So thank you so much.